Let me just turn my Slack on.
Hey guys, welcome to this week's podcast episode. I'm really excited about today's topic of conversation. We're going to talk all about tech entrepreneurship, social, internet, digital marketing, creative economy, thought leadership. And the guest I have today, AJ Kumar from Los Angeles. He's a digital maestro. We're going to figure out what all that is and going to be a all around fantastic conversation. I'm happy to welcome AJ to the show. Welcome.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah. Tell people about your background, how you got started, what you do, and we'll get right into it.
Yeah, for sure. So I've been in digital marketing for almost 15 years now. So it's been a minute, and I've gotten a chance to see all these different trends and a lot of different exciting things happen. I help my clients today with something called ROAC, return on attention created. And I'll tell you about that in a second. But essentially, we're living in this attention economy. And from this attention economy came about the creator economy, which is really the collection of all these different social media platforms and everyday users creating content and sharing content with each other, essentially created this brand new way of commerce and interacting with people and just life in general. So we live in a pretty exciting time. So
Yeah.
when I got into the space, I originally I learned a lot of my digital world skill sets from a guy named Neil Patel, who's an internet guru. A lot of people know about him. He's one of the top players in the world when it comes to that, and has one of the biggest agencies. And he taught me these skill sets that I was originally applying to corporate brands. And I had this natural affinity to wanting to work with people, personal brands. Maybe it's because I grew up with what are called gurus. And naturally, I started working with all these different personalities. But after I was working with these corporate brands in a company called Single Grain, where we were doing SEO for our clients, I shifted and started working with personal brands. One of my first personal brands was a woman named Kimberly Snyder, who's a celebrity nutritionist. And from that, I was able to build this infrastructure for what's now referred to as a personality driven media company. And that was essentially a vertically integrated company end to end, where everything from the ideas to the experiences that users are having with her is all controlled by her. And that was done in Google land in her blog. And that infrastructure is basically what I help clients do now with social media.
Yeah. It's fascinating. The whole social media landscape, because now there's podcasts and there's YouTubers and TikTokers that have a bigger following than Bloomberg or CNBC or any of these. And you don't have to go through gatekeepers. It's basically you learn how to create this return on attention. So talk about this attention economy, why it's important, attention as a currency and an asset. The younger generation understands that, but the Gen Xers or the boomers, it's not as familiar to them.
Yeah. It's really fascinating because you could basically think about it. A lot of this started occurring as the smartphone came about and more people adopted that technology. And for the longest time, a lot of people are really mesmerized by all the technology and the novelty of social media and smartphones just because it was brand new. It reminds me of that movie 2001 Space Odyssey where you see that big block and everyone's, "What is this? It's so crazy." That's how I see the smartphone. So essentially, a lot of people started realizing that we live in a digital world, right? Most people understand the inner world, their thoughts, their feelings, what's happening inside, and the physical world, government, taxes, jobs. But then there's also a digital world that exists. And that digital world is the collection of everybody on the internet at the same time, building, creating something. And essentially what has happened is people are paying attention to their smartphones. In fact, when it comes to social media, I think people are on their phones on social media maybe 2.5 hours a day, just consuming content like crazy. And that basically became a currency. Even now, for myself, I'm studying the concept of attention economics because we're at this point where these units of attention have meaning and have value to it. Most people for the last decade or so looked at social media arbitrarily with numbers and metrics. What does this mean? Like, why don't I just buy followers or what? It didn't really equate to any value. That's why I created something with my business mentor, a guy named Roy. we created a methodology called ROAC, Return on Attention Created. And really what that is, it's a way to qualitatively and quantitatively understand the value that's being created as a result of content creation. So a lot of my clients, I've had maybe four or so clients that have gotten TV shows or TV spots at major network television as a result of people watching them on social media. Social media is really just a way for you to build relationships faster than what it was like with traditional media or the old world, right? What people did with networking events or like meeting people is now just done at this rapid light speed pace online. So for people that understand it and know how to navigate the digital world, you can move really quickly and do things that traditionally took 10, 20, 30 years to do in a fraction of that time. And that's why you're seeing all these young people who deeply understand technology, especially the people that have grew up with it, advancing so quickly. And now, even in the traditional business and media landscape, which is a space where people are very risk averse. When you're trying to work with people, you look to see how many followers they have, how many views they have, what their online presence is like, because that just shows that, hey, they're coming with something of value, right? If you want to publish a book deal, then you better come with some kind of existing social media audience because otherwise they don't want to invest in you.
Yeah. It's so fascinating. And what you're talking about is such gold because it's this new currency by which people can create lives and they don't have to like, I studied like 17 years to be a surgeon. Think about like a social media influencer. If he or she knows how to like capture attention and leverage it, they can make the same amount in a year, 2 years, whatever. Very powerful. The next thing is talking about, especially after COVID, I think it really slapped everybody in the face, woke everybody up and talk about this importance of building a personal brand because my parents' generation, they're always like a job that's gonna save you a job, pensions and then my grandparents were like, the government's gonna save you, social security, that's the thing. But now talk about how personal brand is like your insurance, like how that's gonna save you.
Yeah, that's a good way. That's a good way you put it, Chris. It's true. It is very much that. And even to what you're saying about you being a surgeon for 17 years, I do think you're making a different kind of impact than a lot of these social media influencers. I do think with social media, you could impact people positively. I wouldn't say everybody's doing that, but you could do that. Like I always talk about human healing brand in the sense that when you're creating content that makes people learn something, that gets people to laugh, that gets people inspired, that's like ways to heal people, right? It's not like a surgeon actually saving someone's life, so I wouldn't compare it like that. But it is true that in the time that we live in today, your personal brand, how people see you in their minds, is more important because that's most of their interaction with you. The social world and the digital world is already augmenting how people see you in real life, how they perceive you, how they understand you. For example, I have a website where I have a bio written of me. It's a very long bio. It's a story. It's written as the hero's journey. It takes 7 to 10 minutes to read it. But every time somebody reads that on my website, it changes the way they relate to me. It changes my communication with them and how they understand me. And it positions me in a way to where it benefits me to where they want to become clients, where they want to hire me, etc. And anybody really has the power to do that. It's not to say you want to make stuff up so people work with you, because I'm sharing my real experiences, but I'm sharing them in an interesting and an entertaining way. So when it
Mm.
comes to building your personal brand on the internet, it's now you and everybody else trying to do the same things. It's also that you got to make yourself and present yourself in an interesting and an entertaining way. And when I say entertaining, I don't necessarily mean be a clown, although you can be if you want to be. I say entertaining in its original root meaning of being able to hold someone's attention. So
Yeah.
it's not just about facts and like just giving that information, but it's about repackaging those facts and that information in a story or in a way that like gets people to like to feel intrigued, right?
Yeah.
Because there's so many channels that people could pay attention to. In the past, you dial through channels on the radio or you flip through channels on the television, on TV. Now you're essentially swiping through channels on social media networks. It's like social media is similar. It's a comparable to television, but it's different, right? Like you're not watching 30-minute shows on social. You're probably watching a 30-second show on social. So our
Yeah.
consumption habits have also drastically changed as well. So if you are some kind of business professional, some kind of service provider, whether you're a doctor or lawyer, you want clients, then you got to start thinking about social media as at least one of the channels that you want to be on, that you want to be present on as part of an omni-channel approach. Like my friend Neil always talks about, social platforms come and go. But when you have an omni-channel approach, then your presence is what stays, right? Because even though you don't own your TikTok or your Instagram, like those are all rented platforms. What you do own is your image in the minds of consumers. So if you could leverage these social media platforms to position yourself in people's minds as the go-to expert for your niche, and you do that on a consistent basis, right? You're pumping out content daily. Subconsciously, you're programming them to think that way. And when you could
Mhm.
do that successfully, they're more likely to choose you, work with you, talk to you when it comes down to them making that decision of, hey, I need a lawyer, I need a doctor, I need a trademark, or whatever the service provider is offering.
Yeah, you're touching on such a social credibility and social reputation. It's a new way of, in the past, it was like if you appeared in the movies or on TV commercials, that was like, or you're a athlete or a celebrity, that was like your social reputation. But now it's how many followers you have, how many likes, engagement, which was really interesting. Is I like your idea of packaging information and entertaining in a way to capture attention. Because I was listening to a interview by Ben Mesrick. He wrote the newest book, Breaking Twitter, and he was saying basically a lot of people covered that story, but he likes to create stories and narratives around highly impactful events in packaging in that way. My next question is, how does because I'm listening to this recent interview by Nilay Patel of the Decoder, and he's talking about the intersection of AI and social media, and it collides because AI is gonna really, it's this really disruptive force, and how is it gonna change and influence social media?
Yeah, that's a fascinating area just because I think we could all relate and appreciate the experience that we had with AI within the last year. I think ChatGPT has been around for about a year now, and I think it was just a few days ago was its anniversary. And
Yeah.
everyone could see how drastically, how quickly and radically everything has shifted. And now there's virtually every app, virtually every piece of technology is now currently being integrated with AI. And that is what's happening across the board. Even in, so when it comes to social media, a lot of people are just the same. And that's what you're going to start to see is the sea of sameness because everyone's trying to use AI to make themselves look smarter and whatever. What stands out now are people that are able to actually share real experiences about what they're doing. Because there's a lot of people that talk about theoret and just airy stuff about what's interesting and whatnot. And that's good information, but it's people that can actually demonstrate real experience that they've had. As a surgeon, right? Like you have actual real experience, 17 years of experience of actually doing surgeries. So there could be somebody talking about surgeries or there could be somebody talking about all these topical topics, but AI can't give them experience that they could actually talk from a nuanced perspective. So when it comes to making a decision of, oh, should I work with Dr. Lou or should I work with this influencer that is just talking about it? Dr. Lewis, 17 years of experience doing actual surgeries. This other guy is just regurgitating information. So I think
Mhm.
right now, the most immediate way, because it's hard to say what's going to happen 2 years from now, 3 years from now, 4 years from now, 5 years from now, just because we're already on this exponential curve and we're essentially ascending and changing at this just level that it's sometimes really hard to even comprehend. But at least for now, at least for the next year, 2 years, if you could communicate your experience, your expertise, your authority, your trust, if you could do that effectively, Google calls that EAT, right? Google utilizes experience, expertise, authority, and trust as a way where they rank websites on their platform. Similarly, you could take that with how you're creating content on social media platforms. So if you could demonstrate that your experience in an entertaining way, then you'll have a much higher chance at winning. I always tell people the type of people that I work with are people that are either educators that I help them become more entertainers, or they're entertainers and I help them become more educators, right? They call it edutainment. So people are on different sides of that spectrum. For example, I have this client named Nikki Haskell. She's 83 years old, and we're killing it with her on TikTok, on Instagram. She went from 10,000 followers on Instagram to 350,000 followers. Went from like 5,000 followers on TikTok to 370,000. And it's not really the followers that I care much about, because the follower number isn't as important as other metrics like viewership. So with her, we're averaging 3 to 4 million views every single month. And that return on attention created, ROAC, what we talked about, for her, it has been brand deals, but what always happens in the beginning is her relationships changed. The people in her life started looking at her differently. She's 83 years old. So when you're at that level, people already have this like way that they see you, right? Like you're established, you're just set in that way, and that's how they see you. But what we did with her is what I believe an experiment, a social experiment in itself. You have this woman, now 83, people see her radically different. We changed her from just being an entertainer to educating. And now she's constantly, younger girls are coming up to her and thanking her for inspiring them and making them laugh and feel hopeful, right? It's like when you could do that kind of impact and you're making that kind of impact in real life, even for her, now she's getting brand deals. Now she's getting television show appearances. She's on big podcasts, right? Everything started radically changing in her life.
Yeah.
And honestly, if it can happen to somebody at that age, it could happen to anybody at any age. But
Yeah.
it does require certain strategies. It does require certain tactics. And what I've learned from my friend Neil, it really does come down to consistency. Neil's been a guy that's been blogging on his website for over a decade, nonstop, all the time. And it's just the one thing he never gave up. And that really was, to me, like a big lesson in life, because I was sporadic with any of my content creation over time.
Yeah.
But then I just saw from that experience of where it took him, that I started applying that for my clients and even for myself, that when you're consistently putting yourself out there, the results start to show. And that's why we call it ROAC, because it's different from direct response advertising, where you have return on ad spend and it's very black and white. I call this delayed response. So ROAC is about seeding. It's about putting ideas in people's heads. It's about being there. It's about being consistent so that over time they have this narrative. Have you ever seen one of those like booklets where there's like a picture of somebody on each page, and when you flip it, it starts to create this like story?
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
how I see social media. So if you could show up every single day and you could essentially make it a habit for people to want to consume your content, in their minds, there starts to become this narrative of how they see you, how they perceive you, how they understand you. And it ultimately influences their decision, their buying behavior.
Yeah. Very powerful. Two questions looking forward, because you talked about the metaverse, and we have around 7 minutes, but the metaverse, and where do you see social media colliding with the metaverse? Because now we're like Zoom and we got camera mics, but eventually are we going to put on a headset and go in and give presentations in a town hall? Where do you see that?
Ready Player One.
Okay.
That's a fun book to read. So when I said augmenting, I'm talking about without glasses. I'm saying that right now, our reality has already been augmented without putting glasses on. We already make decisions based off of how we look and understand somebody online, whether it's a corporate brand or whether it's a personal brand. That influences how we see people. There will come a time and a place where people are wearing glasses more frequently because now they look cooler. Whereas 10 years ago, I bought Google Glass and it just didn't look that cool.
Yeah.
Now, at least they're trying to put stuff in Ray-Ban glasses and they're trying to just make it more fashionable so that they can help more people adopt it, which I think will happen in the next 3 to 10 years or so, or whenever that happens. hard to say how things will change, but I'll tell you one thing is that by positioning yourself as someone that people recognize today, by having a personal brand today, as more and more people are more chronically online, because we're already chronically online, but as people become more chronically online, that will be that'd be advantageous for you.
Yeah.
However, the world's going to change. Having a personal brand is going to just give you a position in life to wherever it changes and however it changes, you'll at least have some kind of leverage that you could use.
Yeah. It's fascinating because a lot of my colleagues, for majority of positions, they don't really have the time to do this, but the smart ones, the younger ones, they actually realize the importance of what you're saying, and they're on TikTok. They have TikTok channels and a way to educate their patients and get clients, advertise their business. And they have, some of them have hundreds of thousands of followings on YouTube. So it's really what you're saying is golden. If people want to work with you, contact you, follow your social media, check out your work, how can they do?
Yeah, I think best way to connect with me is to follow me on Instagram, AJ the Digital Maestro. And if you want to research me or look at my bio, the one I was talking about, you could go to ajkumar.com. That's ajkumar.com.
Yeah. And for all the audience out there, really fantastic conversation from someone who sees the future. He's worked with a lot of key influencers. Neil Patel is a huge guy on SEO and one of the pioneers. And all of AJ's resources will be in the links and show notes. And with that, thanks so much for coming on.
Thanks, guys. Thanks, Chris.